Welcome to the Crush Cravings with Confidence podcast. I'm Coach Lisa Callahan, a recovered emotional eater. I ended decades of self-inflicted struggles with food through taking a journey of self-discovery, which revealed the secrets of what was going on underneath the food. Throughout this podcast, we'll explore topics that are rarely talked about, like low self-esteem, lack of confidence, people-pleasing, and decades of self-sabotaging behaviors. Rather than just focusing on the food, we'll dive deeper into aspects of who you are as a person and how you ended up relying on food for comfort to begin with. My mission is simple: to empower women to regain their confidence and prioritize self-love, regardless of the number on the scale. Discover what you've really been craving, and trust me, it's not about the food. This podcast is based on insights shared from the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group on Facebook, so be sure to check out the show notes for the link to the group and a complimentary gift just for you. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Hey, welcome to another fun and insightful episode of the Crush Cravings with Confidence podcast. The topic today is 10 ways to love yourself before you ever lose a pound. All right, so as we dive into this episode, I want to get clear on what we're going to talk about because years ago, the words self-love or love yourself used to roll through my mind like words that were not for me. It wasn't that I was opposed to self-love. I just didn't really know what it was. So I didn't think that it was something that I was lacking. But at the same time, my attitude towards myself made it quite clear that I was not really loving myself, much less even liking myself, until I lost weight or maintained my weight, which was always fluctuating. So I was never truly happy with myself. But I didn't really know what that all meant, so it was quite confusing to me. It just sounded like a word. It was like self-love, like, or whatever, okay. And I really fluffed it off. I just didn't realize how important it is to be able to love yourself right where you're at before you ever lose a pound. And it's no wonder that I didn't love myself and that I treated myself so poorly because I was constantly looking for validation outside of myself, whether it be the number on the scale, whether it be if I did a good job for somebody, if I, worked endless amounts of hours, if I got some kind of achievement in my fitness level. Like I was always looking for my happiness, my goodness, my good feelings about myself from outside of myself. That, my friends, is what we're going to be talking about today. There's a quote you can write down. Your attitude determines your direction. Life is a gift to be enjoyed, not to be endured. And I think I had that quite wrong for a long time. So I wonder if you're feeling the same way as well. So as we dive into this episode, I want to unpack what self-love is not so that you can get a bird's eye view of the things that you might be doing to make it difficult for you to love yourself. So if you are beating yourself up with negative self-talk or criticism, especially around your weight or your food choices, that is the opposite of self-love. If you're saying yes to everyone and everything while ignoring your own needs, that is the opposite of self-love. If you feel guilty about prioritizing your well-being, or you tell yourself that it's actually selfish to put yourself first, that is the opposite of self-love. If you're holding on to past mistakes and using them as reasons to stay stuck in the past, that is the opposite of self-love. If you're seeking approval or love or validation or feeling like you need others to tell you that you've done a good job or that, you're important to them so that you can feel worthy of belonging, that's the opposite of self-love. If you're numbing your emotions with food, keeping yourself so busy and distracted that you have zero time for yourself or anything that makes you feel like you're the top priority, if everything else is coming before you, that's the opposite of self-love. And if you're forcing yourself to be perfect or meet unrealistic expectations, like things that are not sustainable, that honestly you would never expect from anybody else, but you put them on yourself because you have to do everything so perfect, that is not self-love. And by the way, just so you know, living on a diet or restricting yourself from certain foods forever is absolutely the opposite of self-love, because even though you're telling yourself that, you have to live in this all or nothing zone, that's not how you were born. And honestly, if a baby was born tomorrow and you looked at that baby and you said, hey, guess what? Everybody else gets to eat this way, but you have to eat this way, you wouldn't wish that upon anybody. So it's unfair for you to say, well, I just can't eat chocolate ever. I can't eat a piece of bread ever. I can't have a tortilla chip or have a taco when I'm out ever, or pizza. Like, it's not fair to say that you have to stay away from these food groups forever because you know yourself so well and you can't be trusted around food and you know what your triggers are and all that stuff. I want all of that to go away simply because you heal the roots of why that ever started to begin with. And that is self-love. So, what do you think? Are you loving yourself or are you not? So I hope that you see from this angle and like the wider perspective. I want you to take that 30,000 foot view is what we call it, because if you had told me a long time ago that I wasn't loving myself because I was staying on a diet, I would have told you the exact opposite. I would have been like, no, I actually love myself, and that's why I protect myself from not getting myself in trouble. That's why I don't keep certain foods in the house. That's why I make certain that I, don't set myself up for situations where I'm going to land myself with my hand in the cookie jar. I thought that I was doing the best thing for me because I knew myself so well. The problem is that I was holding myself hostage in my own personal justice system. So you can write that down if you want. Personal justice system. That means that you are judging yourself, you are blaming yourself, you are convincing yourself that you're not trustworthy, you're telling yourself you're bad, you're telling yourself you're always going to be bad and that you're always going to have to stay locked in this personal justice system because you know yourself so well. That, my friends, is mean. It's mean. It's not fair because it's like, what kind of criminal act did you do that comes with no forgiveness forever? That this is just how it is, this is just how you are, and that you never, ever get to change. That's not fair. You actually do get to change. And if you can learn how to start to love yourself from the inside out, you'll be able to take the keys and set yourself free from this personal justice system. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So self-love is a deep, unconditional acceptance of yourself, just as you are right now. And because you love yourself, you naturally want to take part in taking good care of yourself all the time. And it's not about squeezing in time for yourself in between all of the chaos. Everything else can be chaos. When you love yourself right where you're at, you get to be the calm. And that's why you love yourself, because you're the calm. And so I want you to write this down. Every experience in life is purposeful, even the challenges. Self-love is about seeing the purpose instead of the challenge. It's about showing up as the best version of yourself for yourself all the time and treating yourself with love and kindness and embracing both your strengths and your flaws without judgment. It's the opposite of wanting perfection. It's actually being able to show up unapologetically and meet yourself right where you're at. Period. End of story. And know that you're always going to have your best interest at heart. That's your top priority. So that means that you're not going to betray yourself with food, with judgment, with blame, with shame, with guilt, with regret, and anything else that you can possibly muster up a disappointment, like all of those things. If you're already aligned and connected with yourself, you'll be the calm within all of the chaos. Everything out there can be chaotic, but you can stay connected with yourself. A lot of times you might think that self-love is selfish. Actually, it's not. Sometimes you can do something for others so that they see you as being good, or they are happy with you, but then you're actually suffering because of it. And you're only doing that thing because you want someone else to see you in a certain light. That's selfish. And I know that you might not be able to see that yet. And this is what we teach in Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System, which is where I coach my students. So I am a recovered emotional leader myself, and I take women now through a journey of self-discovery so that they can identify the parts of their own story that they're holding themselves hostage in, like I did. And being able to see that bigger picture, that wider lens, where you're not showing up for yourself with love and unconditional acceptance, but you're going to go out of your way to do stuff for everybody else, which is going to totally exhaust you, so that then you have to sit on the couch and go like, oh, I'm just going to sit here and watch TV and munch on some chips because I'm so exhausted from doing all those great things for everybody else. And boy, do I feel good about myself because they're happy with me. Munch, munch, munch. Something's wrong. It's just, we have to turn this around. You've got to wake yourself up to the idea that your good feelings about yourself have to come from inside of you. So that way you can set clear boundaries for yourself to know when something is okay for you and when it's not going to drain you of your emotional energy, and when it's okay to say no, or I'll get back to you because I don't think that's going to work for me. Let me get back to you, without lying, making something up, telling somebody, I have something else to do, but when you really don't, just because you want to make up something because you don't want to hurt their feelings, right? Those are the opposite things of self-love. It's being able to show up for yourself and truly love yourself, to create a life for yourself where you're no longer seeking validation from your weight on the scale, your fitness level even, your size, people, external achievements, and instead you feel at home and within yourself. So we're going to go over 10 steps today that I think you're going to really enjoy. And you can take a pen and paper out. This podcast is always interactive. I always like to see your comments. So if there's one of these steps that you really like, please leave me a comment. Like, subscribe to the channel, share the episode. I love that. It makes a great fit when we're like spreading that energy, spreading that joy. It's called the ripple effect, right? I once upon a time was not feeling aligned with myself, and now because I'm feeling aligned with myself, I'm able to come here and help you, and then you help yourself so that you can give others. The more you can love yourself, the more you'll be able to show up in the world as the best version of yourself, the more you'll be able to be kind and understanding and caring and connected and peaceful, and that will spread out throughout the entire world, which is really cool. So step 1 is to learn how to become proactive instead of reactive. When you're proactive, this means that you're going to create a buffer between the things that trigger you, and I'll just let you know that a trigger is an unhealed part of yourself. So sometimes you can have this trigger where then you react to yourself, and sometimes you act to others in a way that doesn't have you showing up as the best version of yourself. And then later, you're pissed off at yourself. Maybe you're mad at someone else. Maybe you're judging them. Maybe you're blaming them. And then you're reacting to that. And then it doesn't show up in a kind way to yourself. So what you end up doing then is now you're pissed off, and it creates a situation where now you're eating a whole bag of chips and you're changing your mood and you're feeling awful about yourself. And it's not putting you in the top priority. This simple step reminds you that you can feel empowered and prepared first, even when life gets messy. So the way to start to become proactive with yourself is to start to tell yourself that you deserve to be happy. And that means that the way that you respond to yourself is always going to come first. You can write this down. Responsibility is merely your ability to respond to yourself with love and kindness. And there's actually an author, his name is Viktor Frankl, and he shares in his book, The Man's Search for Meaning, that when you are no longer able to change your circumstances, you're challenged to change your response. And this is kind of cool. And that's why when you practice self-love, it's like you're inflating yourself. You're pumping yourself up with oxygen, with love, with goodness, with kindness. And then when you go out into the world and something does happen, somebody else is in your space and you're, reacting to that, you're going to remember that you're already the calm. And so that's why this proactive instead of reactive is really going to help you to stay aligned with yourself. So that way you can love yourself enough to not allow things that get, in your day to contaminate your space, that you're the most important thing in your world. All right, number 2, train your mind to work with you instead of against you. So just speaking about emotionally eating alone, this can happen in the blink of an eye. Before you know what you're even thinking, you're like, I need to eat something right now. And you tell yourself that it's to calm you down. Again, if you're going out in the world unarmed, meaning that you're not proactively protecting your self-love, if you're not doing that, then when you go out in the world, you're going to kind of be looking for those triggers. And so then you might react in an automatic way. And before you have a choice to do this, you're just going to let yourself kind of shift your day. And then suddenly you're like, my whole day's ruined. And that's what's going to take you out of alignment with your integrity, right? So then suddenly you're pissed off and you're just completely outside of yourself, not meeting yourself where you're at, not gently reminding yourself that you don't have to have all of that negative energy come inside of you, that you actually have self-love. And that's like your kryptonite. So you're not going to then step into a space where you're going to start to negatively talk about yourself, or you're not going to think to yourself, oh, I'm so stressed now, I've got to eat this whole bag of chips. And you're not going to stop at the gas station on the way home and just be like, I just need a Kit Kat. No, you actually don't, really, because you don't have to believe everything your mind tells you. And sometimes those thoughts are going to lead you to self-harm, and you have to be able to step in front of that and remind yourself that your mind can be used as a weapon against you. And so you can write this down. I don't have to believe everything I think. So if your mind's telling you I just need a Kit Kat bar or whatever, say, you know what, actually, I don't actually have to tell myself that I love myself enough, and I don't have to feed into that space or that belief, because that ends up strengthening the weakest version of you. It's like there's a version of you that literally says, you can't handle this. This is completely out of your control. And now because of that, you have to go use food to hurt yourself. No, that's not going to cut it anymore. So you've got to train your mind to work with you instead of against you. Number 3, reclaim your personal power. You already have personal power inside of you. Remember that baby I was talking about before? You wouldn't wish upon that baby that they're going to have all these things that they can't trust themselves with in their lives. Your personal power is there. It's just that it's been chipped away over a period of time. So from an emotional eating standpoint, it might feel like there's this constant part of your life where you're feeling like the other shoe's going to drop. So like you don't trust things, right? There's societal pressures, there's diet culture, past experiences that maybe you've had that have overshadowed your inner confidence, which is your personal power. So every person is born with a unique purpose, but as we navigate through the world, we often begin to dim our own light by focusing on external things. We feel judged. We compare ourselves to others. We look at our appearance. We hear other people say, you did this and you did that. And somebody puts self-doubt in your head. But I will say this, somebody can put self-doubt in your head. You're the only one that can accept it. Judgments, they're just mirror reflections of fear. Comparisons, that's the thief of happiness. So if you keep all of these little things rolling in your head and you remind yourself that you have personal power and you don't have to give it away. Anybody can put self-doubt in your head. You're the only one that can accept it. So just make certain that if you're going to protect anything, don't protect all of your weaknesses. Don't protect all of your I can'ts and I should have and I couldn't do this and I couldn't do that. Like, pause on that. Protect your personal power. That's your integrity. To reconnect with your personal power, begin to tune out those external pressures and shift your focus inward. Ask yourself, how do I want to feel about myself? Rather than, well, what do I feel about myself now? This simple question helps to quiet the negative voice that creates, all of that like chaos inside of your head. And it starts to create a softer and kinder voice to emerge, one that will connect you with more of a spiritual alignment. So the question again is, how do I want to feel about myself? Not how do I feel about myself? Forget about that. Go with the second thought. Once you start to learn how to listen to your inner voice, you're going to discover that food's not the answer to anything. And you're going to want to start to reconnect with your complimenting yourself instead of criticizing yourself, turning inward so that you can reconnect with your power and begin to make choices that don't end you up with your hand at the bottom of a bag of chips. All right, step 4 is to practice self-compassion. Remember that personal justice system I shared with you before? It's like to hold yourself hostage for ever and ever and ever and ever and ever for maybe mistakes that were made in the past or for something that someone did like to you in the past. The past version of you is not current, right? It's not present. So if there's one strategy that I want you to take away from this episode today, I want you to remember this. You cannot give what you do not have. So if showing up compassionately and kindly for yourself is really difficult to you, but you show up with kindness and compassion for everybody else, you're setting yourself up for self-sabotage. Self-compassion is essential for self-care. If you don't care about yourself, you're not going to feel motivated to take care of yourself, and then you won't be putting yourself in front of that voice in your head that tells you that it's going to be impossible for you to change. So you have to be kind to yourself. You've got to remember that change is not about perfection. It's not about changing things all or nothing. It's progress. One first, next, right step at a time. Meet yourself where you are at right now and offer yourself the same kindness that you would offer a dear friend. If somebody was berating themselves, telling themselves they're horrible, telling themselves that they just can't forgive themselves, telling themselves that they can't, get past this, whatever, you'd sit with them and you'd actually be really kind. You'd be like, hey, listen, meet yourself where you're at. You're doing the best you can. Like you would tell them that. And yet for you to do that for yourself, that just becomes a big ball of fear. I can't do it. I can never change, right? And so all of those voices that come into your head that convince you that you can't change, even though you know that you would be kind to others, you know you would. So just remember that when that fear voice comes in your head, just remember that fear is false evidence appearing real. And also remind yourself when you feel like, oh my gosh, I just can't do it and it's going to be too much and I'm too far gone and all of these like things that are just like not helpful. Just remember that when you feel like you could potentially fail at something and so you're just like, whatever, I'm not even going to try. Just remember that there's no such thing as failure. There's just redirection. And also remember that the word fail stands for first attempt in learning. So even if you have failed at something, so what? It doesn't matter because it was just your first attempt. And you'll improve once you know better. And once your best interest is at your heart, like once it's at the center of you, and once you have the self-love, then taking care of yourself actually becomes effortless. So if you stick with me on this journey, you're going to see that I can teach you how to shift out of that negative thinking and towards having a beautiful love affair and relationship with yourself. That's what I teach in my Crush That Food Thing self-discovery system. Number 5 is identifying your triggers so that you can start to heal them. Remember that what we teach in Crush That Food Thing is that a trigger is simply an unhealed part of yourself. We all have memories. We all have a life. Most of us, actually, most of my students are in their 60s, some 70s, some 80s, some 50s. But we've all like lived a life. And many of us lived really, really, really busy when we were younger. I definitely did. And when I lived busy, that was a lot of my ego. You know, I wanted to like do better and have the things and check off the boxes and all that stuff. But as I got older, I realized that the same things that worked for me when I was younger, they're just not working for me now. So I had to change. I had to embrace a new way of thinking. And I also had to forgive myself for the things that I did wrong in the past when I was serving my ego because I didn't know any better. So these triggers, they become the roots of these memories that come from the past. And because you don't want to live in the past, what we have to do is we have to bring ourselves into the present. So that way, you know that no matter what your memory is, you're not going to judge it. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be bad. And please know that I know that a lot of the memories that people come into, especially work with me, they're really traumatic. And I know that we have women from all over the place that have had all sorts of experiences from, abusive situations to abusive marriages, to, just childhood traumas, really severe things, people dying and people, coming out of tremendous situations. So please know that whatever your past experiences are, that the whole purpose here of connecting with a spiritual part of you is to take those past painful experiences and turn them into your purpose. That way you can heal these triggers and to take your struggle and turn it into your strength. That's what self-discovery helps you do. All right, moving on to number 6, we're going to shift your mindset from restriction to freedom. Thinking about food again, food is meant to fuel your body just like gas to a car. So how did it become a source of comfort and stress relief and a way to cope and something to fill your time when you're bored or you're sad or you're lonely? And why do we have to feel guilt and shame and embarrassment after we eat? Like, when did food become tangled up with weight loss and starting to affect like your outcome that you want for yourself? Like, when did it switch from just being food? So what we help you to do is learn to shift your mindset from restriction to freedom. So the keys to stepping into repairing your relationship with food is to repair your relationship with yourself first. That's it. So many times people say to me, well, Lisa, I want to have a better relationship with food. Great. Look in the mirror. Because you have to have a repaired relationship with yourself first. That's what we're doing here. So when you come in from an angle of, I can't trust myself, I have no willpower, I know myself so well, this is how I am, this is how I have always been, this is how my family is, whatever, all of that is triggers. So those are the parts that we want to heal, because if you put yourself into a position where now you're restricting forever and ever and ever, that means that you don't believe in yourself. You don't believe that you can heal. You don't believe that you can become a better version of yourself. That is what we call a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset is where you do not believe that you can change. You don't believe that you can evolve. Maybe evolving is for other people, but not for you. Well, that is the opposite of self-love. So we have to be able to choose to change the rooted beliefs. You can never outperform your self-image. So if you have this self-image about yourself that you can't change, or you can't do anything, or it's not for you, everybody else can change, but not for you, you're going to have to give yourself permission to start to listen to your more purposeful self, right? The one that's not anchored into all these rigid rules. And then you'll be able to feel empowered to make decisions that support your well-being and your happiness right now, today. All right, number 7, replace emotional eating with self-care. So they say that self-care is the best care, and yet many times we tell ourselves that we're tuning into food for comfort or soothing, and it's the best way to cope. But then emotional eating is not self-care. I mean, you have to know that, right? It's self-sabotage. So when you use food as this quick fix for stress and sadness and boredom, and you're not addressing the deeper issue, you're lying to yourself. You're literally taking a weapon. You're sabotaging your best interest. So that food, you might as well be eating that and stabbing yourself in the back of your throat with a knife. It's self-sabotage. And it has nothing to do with food choices. You can eat whatever you want. Chips, cookies, cake, whatever you want. As long as you're not using it to hurt yourself. As long as it's not ending you up with a result that is mismatched from what you say you want. Right? It's just that simple. So when you stay in this cycle where you're telling yourself that food is comforting and stress relief and you're using it to cope, and please stop telling yourself that right now, because that is false. It's just a lie. It's not true. And that food is never going to lead you towards the best version of yourself. All that's doing, all you telling yourself that is doing, is telling yourself that you don't deserve love and compassion, and that this temporary relief is going to lead you to feeling horrible about yourself. But you're not telling yourself that. You're telling yourself it's going to make you feel good, and you know it's not. So you're lying to yourself. So you've got to stop that. That part cannot continue. So now I want you to ask yourself, what's one thing I can do to strengthen my relationship with myself instead of sabotaging it? All right, number 8. Set boundaries with your negative voice. And that's really what I was just saying about stop that. You have to set boundaries for yourself, to yourself. When people think about boundaries, they often think about setting boundaries for other people, but we're not strong enough to do that yet. If you don't know how to set clear boundaries with yourself, how in the world are you supposed to do it with others? It's just not possible. So if you want to start to practice self-love, you're going to have to learn how to set boundaries with yourself. And although you might not think this is possible, you might think, no, I'm too weak. I have no willpower. I can't do this. I can't do that. That's the voice we're going to have to stop first, right? Because that's negative self-talk. So we have to have what's called aligned self-talk. Aligned, write that down. Aligned self-talk is where you get to decide if what you're saying is going to help you grow, or if it's going to keep you stuck. And if it's not aligned, that means that what you want and what you end up doing are two different things. So you've got to get in front of that, right? So if, an example is if you tell yourself you're using food to soothe and then you end up feeling disgusting, those two things are not aligned. So you have to make certain that whatever you're going to tell yourself, if you're going to tell yourself that you're using food and you know it's going to lead you to feel disgusting, then just make certain that as you're eating it, you're like, I want to feel disgusting, because that's what you're going to get. And you know that. So always check out what your results are going to be that are mismatched from what you say you want. Then you'll have alignment, and then you can practice self-love. All right, last 2. Meet yourself right where you're at. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Many women who struggle with a lack of self-love set unrealistic expectations for themselves. They think they need to have it all figured out, eat perfectly, fix their food habits overnight, fix their relationship with themselves, and they're striving for perfection, which leads to frustration and shame and a sense that you'll never measure up. That's the opposite of self-love. So lasting changes start with meeting yourself right where you're at, not judging yourself for where you think you should be or being mad at yourself for where you are. That's not okay. You have to accept your current reality without judgment so that you can give yourself space to grow and evolve. Instead of focusing on everything that you wish was different, focus on one small compassionate step forward. Give yourself permission to be a human being, not have an expectation of being a human doing, period. All right, last step. Know that asking for help is a sign of strength. I used to think that my emotional struggles, if I asked for help, I thought that was going to show me as being weak. And I didn't want anybody to think that I was being weak because I got my good feelings about myself from helping others. So if I showed them that I didn't have it all figured out, then I was afraid that they wouldn't come to me to help them. And then I thought, well, what am I going to do then? If they see me as being weak, then I won't be able to help them. And I only get my good feelings about myself from helping others. So I was a mess, right? It was like a cycle. Emotional eating is very isolating. It's not like the binge happens when you're out and about. Like you do this stuff by yourself, right? Most of the time anyways. So when you don't know how to ask for help because you're afraid to put yourself out there as being weak, just know that asking for help is not a sign of weakness. Actually, sitting alone in silence is. Because it even makes you sort of feel like falsely superior. You know, like people don't know. So people are like, I don't know, she just does so much. I don't know how she does it. So it's almost like it's so isolating because it like puts you in your own category. It's like one and one, right? But you're human. You're a human being. So we don't want that space to contaminate you where you feel like you're on your own, island. That's not fair. And that's why you feel frustrated and that's why you get to feel overwhelmed because you don't know how to ask for help. So the truth is that no one is meant to go through life alone, period. By inviting others into your journey, you're not only easing your own burden, but you're also creating opportunities for learning, growth, and finding solutions that you might have never found on your own. All right, so that wraps up our episode for today. Self-love is a lifelong journey, and it begins with small intentional changes. I want you to use this episode as a guide and a resource, and always remember that I am here. Okay, you can take a first next right step by joining my beginner self-discovery course that's called the Mindset Makeover. It's always in the show notes. I will actually drop a link for a guide that is called the Self-Love Starter Kit in this episode. And you can always book a call with me. There'll be a Food Freedom Discovery call link booked. And you can also send me a DM. You can leave a comment. You can like, subscribe, share, and always reach out to me at lisa@coachlisacallahan.com if you just want to talk to me on email. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Bye for now. All right, my beautiful friend, that brings us to the end of another episode from the Crush Cravings with Confidence podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening today and took something from our conversation that you are going to put into immediate action. I love spending time with you and would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with at least one friend today who you think might be struggling too. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any other amazing topics. And please, please do leave me a review. It would mean the world to me. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.